Well, like Mark said, we went fishing up on the Wisconsin River, and one of the patterns we used was this Murdich Minnow that worked really well. Mark had better luck with it than I did, I think, but it's a great fly. You cast it right up against the bank and strip it back like a fleeing bait fish. It probably, I don't think it'd be not more than 6 feet or 8 feet from the bank, and you'd just pick it up and recast it. And you pretty much had to land within an inch or two of the bank to get it to work, but sometimes they hit it right away. So, well, this is a pattern. It's the Murdich Minnow. It was tied originally by a guy, Bill Murdich. He tied it for a saltwater pattern originally, but it turned out to be a fantastic fly for warm water fish, especially smallmouth. This pattern's kind of a tie that was tied by tight lines. It's on YouTube. If you go to YouTube and search for Murdich Minnow and look for the tight lines, you'll find this the way they tied it. So. Well, not much to say, I guess, other than we can get started. I think we probably just tie along, it'd probably be better. Okay. I think it's a little, not real complicated. There's a few, the only issue first time when I started tying, I didn't have any trouble. Today I was just going over to refresh myself. And I've had trouble with the material spinning around the hook today, which I didn't have before. So that could be one issue. So the pattern calls for a Tiempo 8089. Like Mark mentioned, a lot of people tie this on the P10S. It calls for a size 10. However, when I went to Page Fly on the 8089, they didn't have the size 10. So what we got here are the size 12. So it's a hair smaller, but it'll give you the idea. The other thing that's really hard to, it's kind of a mess. You use the silver flashabou, and that is a real mess to get in your bag and keep it from tangling up. So hopefully that'll straighten out all right for you. We are getting into basically this flashabou is Christmas tree tinsel. So we're getting into the season. We can go out and buy a lifetime supply of silver flashabou. So you get your hooks in your vise, and they say to start the thread about a quarter of the way down the hook. The thread size they call for is a 6/0 white thread. Tight lines in that video, they use the GSP thread so that you can really crank down on the because we use, Mark mentioned EP fiber. This one used bucktail for the start of it. So, but if you start about a quarter of the way down the hook and then start wrapping and wrap all the way to the bend of the hook, so right where the bend of the hook starts. And then we have the first thing you put on is the white bucktail. So it's kind of a long tail fly. So they say to use about 1.5 to 1 3/4 of a hook, the hook length for the tail. So you kind of measure it out, get your point, put it down to the top of the hook, use a couple light pinch wraps, and then you can tighten it down and really crank down the bucktail to keep it from spinning. And you can wrap it forward a few wraps. Something like this. And one thing they suggested, I think it was on that video, not for sure, but if you're tying a bunch of them, kind of make a point, middle point where it hits on your vise. Then you don't have to measure every time. You can just put it up to the vise and tie it in, because you know, like in this one, it's pretty much right at the bend of the vise here, so you can just measure that way every time, and it might save you a little bit of time. Once you get it really down, you can put it up and cut it on an angle so that you can get a bit of a ramp to tie down. Might help to keep it, wrap over those butts a little bit to keep it from spinning a little more. Then our next thing we tie in, we got some pearl flashabou in here. And
all the way back to the original tie-in point?
Pardon?
Go all the way back to the original tie-in point?
Yes, back to the original tie-in point. Now, the pearl is like an overwing on top of the bucktail, and they had it go a little bit longer than the bucktail. So make it just a little bit longer than the end of your bucktail. And again, a couple of loose wraps, pinch wrap, tie it down, and then really cinch it down. And trim that off. All right. We'll pause here to see how everybody's doing. Really isn't too bad a tie considering. The hardest part might be when it comes to put the eyes on it. But everybody about up to this point? The next step is to use the silver flashabou on top. So it's like the lighter, little more bright silvery top to bait fish. And this is a pattern. These are the original colors that he tied it in. But you can also tie it in multiple colors. They like gold and olive are also good colors depending on what kind of bait fish might be on the lake that you're, stream that you're fishing. So on this silver flashabou, all crinkly at the end, you make it the same length as the pearl flashabou, but you're going to fold part of it back. So you want this to hang over the end of the front eye of the hook by a little ways. So it should be long enough that if you're going to slay it down and pull it up to where it's about the same length. Again, do a pinch wrap to get it tied in. Get the point of my hook, hopefully that won't break my thread. And then we'll just let that hang for a while. Just let that hang out over the end for a bit there. All right. Now then, the next step is to use ice fur. Now, this is the ice fur. We're going to cut this in half and tie one piece on one side and one piece on the other side. So if you cut this piece in approximately half.
Did you pick that up? Camera, Bob? There you go. Down low. There you go.
All right. Now I'll cut this in about half. And the back edge you do want to be fairly flat. So if you cut it like that, since the other end is where you
Hold it down closer to the voice part.
and so we'll turn it. And they say to put it 3/8, 3/4 of an inch back. I kind of gauge it to be about to the hook, the end of the hook or a little past, something like that. And this gives it some lift to the fly and also gives it kind of causes it to dart when you strip it back a little bit. So it gives it a little bit of movement in the water.
You're tying right by the tie-in point.
Yeah, tie it in right at the tie-in point with the tail and everything, yeah. Just
On top or on the side?
on the side, so turn, if you got a rotary vise, it's nice to turn it. Because we're going to tie this first half on one side, then we'll tie on the other side. So, yeah, and once that gets tied in, you can rotate your vise or whatever works out for you. And again, tie the other same length and do it on the other side.
Bob, did I miss anything? I didn't see you cut anything. You just left it.
Yeah, at this point, you just leave it.
Okay.
We'll trim it a little bit later, but yeah, at this point,
So you got it on both sides now?
I got it on both sides now.
Okay.
If you trim the ice fur now, it's not that big a deal. Don't worry, I heard somebody make a comment. When we get the ice fur tied in, you grab this tinsel, the silver flashabou that's in the front, and kind of bring it back between the two clumps of ice fur and let it hang. It's going to be a collar kind of over the top of it. So you bring it back and then tie it in. And tie back to the same tie-in point again. Now this tinsel, the silver flashabou, you trim just a little bit longer than that ice fur was. Just kind of stroke it back and cut it a little bit longer than the ice fur and make a collar.
You're pushing it straight back?
Just pull it straight back,
Okay.
tie it down, and then trim it. Hopefully I gave everybody enough.
But you tie it in and then you plug it.
Yeah, tie it in, then trim it just a hair longer than the back end of the ice fur. And then once you get that done, now you can go back and trim the, whatever ice fur that's in the front there. Or any flashabou that didn't get folded back, just kind of trim that up in the front a little bit. Everybody doing all right? Any questions? Yes.
All right, I'm back at the body.
Okay.
Did you trim off the front portion?
Have you folded back that silver flashabou?
No.
Okay, the flashabou that's hanging over the front, pull it back over the top, kind of in between that ice fur, and tie it down right at the same point again as the tie-in point. And then trim it just a little bit longer than the ice fur. So that's like a silver collar then of flashabou that sticks back over there. And then after you do that, you do trim the ice fur and stuff that's sticking out to the front of your tie-in point then.
Okay.
And then the next step, which is pretty much the last step of the actual tying, is you take your, now I had to do a couple of different varieties here because they didn't have enough at DuPage Fly. I bought 2 bags of the Estes. I thought that'd be more than enough. It wasn't enough, so I went back today and they didn't have it, of course. So the original packs, and most of them have a Estes, Pearl Estes Grande. But I went back today, they didn't have that, so I got Cactus Chenille, which is similar. I don't know, this actually is the Cactus Chenille. So it'll work about the same, but we'll tie it on at the tie-in point. This is a little bit, I'm gonna pull a little bit out. Get a little bit of the cord to tie in so it's not quite as thick. And then wrap your thread all the way up to the hook bend then. Or hook bend, hook eye. Going the wrong direction, Anyway, wrap it up to the eye. And what we want to do with this Estes is wrap it and very close. You want a full body, so we're going to wrap it one wrap right after the other, and stroke it back as you go so that you don't trap too much of the fibers. Just touching reps to get the a nice full body on it. And when you get to the eye, you tie it off.
Nothing goes on in front of this one.
No. This is the last thing we'll. So you get it tied down real well. Trim it. And then you can give it a couple more wraps and do a whip finish or half hitches, whatever you prefer. If you need to, you got a few of the fibers up there, you can do a little trimming. Now what we do, they used a cool gray Prismacolor, Panacolor marker and color the top. They said the cool gray. Now, the Page Fly didn't have a cool gray, so I went to the Glick art store. Too easy to have a cool gray. They had 5 or 6 cool grays, all with different colors, percentages, something that I have no idea what.
Yeah, they got a lot of stuff.
Yeah, they do. So I've got 2 of them up here. If people don't have them, what you'll do is, there's a chisel tip on one end. It's the end that's got the P. And you can just go back and then go forward underneath. And you get this, get this top of the fly. This bait fish have a darker top. Get it colored, colored in a bit darker. So if you need pins, you come up and grab them. And then the last thing to do is we'll put on some eyes.
Do you leave it go fuzzy like that, or you just
Yeah,
trim whatever you want, or how you like it?
whatever you like, yeah. Like this one, like I
It's
said,
supposed to be like a minnow, right?
yes, like this one of mine that I used that Cactus Chenille, it does look a little bit long underneath for me, so I might just trim a little bit underneath. And they don't tell you to, but if you want to, you could probably kind of trim out. Where we're going to put the eyes is just a little bit forward, a halfway back to the ice fur. So something, again, right around the quarter hook point. So suggest a gel type super glue. And you can either put it on with the applicator or kind of use your bodkin to put it on. I do have trouble with using the applicator, so I kind of like to Put it on at the back end right there. And take the eye. This is the part, if anything, I have a little bit of trouble with. And kind of lightly press it down. These eyes might be a little big because that's what they, I think I might have got the wrong eye at the initially. Yeah, they say not to press it too hard because I always do this on this other side for some reason. I've had this happen before. I end up getting too much glue and getting stuck on my finger. So some people, Mark gave me this suggestion. To help make it a little more secure, you can put clear glue over the top of it and set it with a UV light. And that'll encompass that eye. And the other one, like I said, I use this gel super glue. Some people, Mark used this E6000. So I think that takes a little longer to try, but
That's almost overnight to really feel hard.
yeah,
That stuff goes sheer.
but that might be good. So that is basically the Murdich Minnow. And like I say, it did work very well. It's a great smallmouth fly. A lot of people, they say that they're going to have one smallmouth fly to use. This is the one that they had to go with.
I guess you could use Redford gills, right, too?
Huh?
Redford gills underneath if you want.
Yeah. In fact, one of the videos I think I saw did use some Redford gills under it. Yeah. And like I had mentioned, different play, they used a gold or an olive. It depends. I mean, if you have shiners or whatever, and you're a different kind of bait fish, you can do a slightly different coloration on it.
Yes, that's, yeah, just a couple pieces of plastic. Probably see if you can, yeah, and then it'll probably work, yeah. First piece of
And hopefully you find a good smallmouth stream and a river and you go fishing. In the spring now, I guess.
And then I guess you can do something.
Any questions or?
Think about it.